Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introduce all from grade 2 with presentation about anthropology linguistic. My name is Atika Maulana. Linguistic Anthropology. Linguistic anthropology is an interdisciplinary field dedicated to the study of language as a cultural resource and speaking as a cultural practice. It assumes that the human language factually in cognitive and social achievement that proves the intellectual tools and for thinking and acting in the world. Its study must be done by the later documentation of what speakers say as they engage in daily social activities. And this documentation relies on participant observation and other methods, including audio-visual recording and honest transcription and interview with participants. Number 1. Linguistic anthropology within the Bayesian tradition. In the holistic tradition established by Franz Boas in the US at the beginning of the 20th century, anthropology was confined as later becomes known as Soviet anthropology. That is the documentation of language and cultural tradition that seemed on the verge of separating. This interprets a struggle against time due to the great damage already done. By the end of the 19th century, to the indigenous culture of Americas by European colonists brought valuable information on Native American traditions, but it had its methodological and theoretical drawbacks. The most flagrant of which was the inability to see or accept the effect of cultural contact and colonization, later become known as Soviet anthropology. That is the documentation of language and cultural tradition that seemed on the verge of disappearing did and interprets a struggle against time due to the great damage already done. By the end of the 19th century, to the indigenous culture of the Americas by European colonizers produced valuable information on Native American traditions, but it had its methodological and theoretical drawbacks. The most flagrant of which was the inability to see or accept the effects of cultural contacts and colonization. Okay, and next, number 2, my friend is Eviani Samongilailai. Next, bye bye.
Hello guys, my name is Yeni and I'm from class 19A. Now I will explain about linguistic anthropology. In the same years in which Chomsky generative grammar was becoming popular in the USA, two other important programs were also launched. The ethnography of communication and urban social linguistics. Through his own qualitatively oriented work and his collaboration with Charles Ferguson on multilingualism in South Asia. John Gumperz criticized the nation, the notion of language as used by linguistics and then, introduced the notion of variety, repertoire, and linguistic community or speech community. In the same years, Gellheimer launched a call for a comparative study of communicative events to capture the ways in which speaking is a cultural activity and should be studied as such. His collaboration with Gumperz produced a new paradigm in linguistic anthropology, one in which research were expanded to study both knowledge and use of language through anthropologic and ethnographic method. In this perspective, the notion of communicative competence was central. See communicative competence linguistic aspect. Okay, now we have to go number 2, from communicative competence to performance. The documentation of variation and the observation of the social life of speech had taught field workers that Chomsky's notion of ideal speaker-hitter was problematic for many reasons, including the fact that not all members of a speech communication have access to the same verbal resources or the same opportunities to use them. In this writing and in his writings, Hymas shifted the focus from universal grammar to linguistic diversity. This changed how methodological and speech genres from narrative speaker linguistic anthropologists shifted their attention to the actual use of language in social interaction. Gumperz and Hymas students went to the field with the goal of study how language was being used in different events and different place. Linguistic performance, the use of language become the starting point of any investigation. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you. Workers that Chomsky's notion of ideal speaker-hitter was problematic for many reasons, including the fact that not all members of a speech communication have access to the same verbal resources or the same opportunities to use them. In this writing and in his writings, Hymas shifted the focus of from universal grammar to linguistic diversity. This changed how methodological and speech genres from narrative speaker, linguistic anthropologists, shifted their attention to the actual use of language in social interaction. Gampers and Hymas children went to the field with the goal of study how language village, how, how language was being used in different event and different place and different place. Linguistic performance, the use of language become the starting point of any investigation. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Wedy Kusuma. I will reading context. In an approach, language is seen as portable to social situation and social rules with on the same theme helping to define two situation and rules. This means that linguistic anthropologists need a targeted tool and unit of analysis to define the context of speech. In the meantime, Gunpers resumed his analysis of multilingualism and language context and become interested in the analysis of face-to-face interaction. He expected the context of linguistic response to include the range of races that speaker haters use to make inferences about the ongoing contact. This line of linguistics written in the notion of contextualization cues linguistic feature through which speaker signal and listening impact when the activity is how semantic context is to be understood and how each sentence relates to what explain of what context related to what practice of flowers confess typical explain of consistent use or international parents linguistics force choice of code use of keyword and formatic experience. He investigated linguistics, sing along a continuum from highly professing they can be interpreted only on the basis of an explicitly connecting with some its blatantly tabulous aspect of contact to highly gravity. The six stream like this in this room is cool are attributed because an assumption that the room must expect for the entrance to be interpretable. A more recent event toward into division of context eliminate model for the construction of social identities, which is based on number of situation dimensional stable through language use, social activities and epistemic sentence. Anthony Giddens McKinnell found connection and the use of the context of ideology in trying to understand how speaker contradicts what constitutes imported and importable language, and the introduction and wider adoption of new recording technologies and their implication for the definition of what constitutes an empirically adequate requirement of speaking or more broadly communication. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Angelina. I am from class 19A.
and I will explain the material about anthropological linguistics. Number 4. New trends. The last 2 decades have seen the development of several new projects involving the interface between language and other cultural resources. 3 of the most important ones are language socializations, multilingualism, and the study of the linguistic dimension of power and control. 4.1 Language socializations. Although the acquisition of cognitive competence was always meant to be an important part of the program in the ethnography of communication. Although related to child language acquisition studies. Language socialization studies examine the cultural implications of what is being done with, to, and around. And talk to children with the theoretical assumption that learning is a two-way street, and that both expert and novice might come out of routine social encounter with new ways of thinking, acting, and feeling. 4.2 Multilingualism. In the 1980s, the writings of Michael Wedy were particularly influential for their conceptualizations of meaning as a joint activity. The attention given to constructing style and voice within the same text, and the identification of both centrifugal and centrifugal, from unity and standardization of language use. 4.3 Power and control. The study of speaking as a cultural practice cannot be made without countering the issue of how language can be used to control the action of others. A number of contributions within linguistic anthropology have dealt with this issue. The power of new technologies in the definition of person and their right was a central theme of Michael Foucault's historical analysis of the development of analysis and other institutions that dealt with health in France. In a similar vein, but using detailed analysis of face-to-face encounters in which participants communicate through talk, gesture, and the use of material artifacts.